The first frost of November lay heavy upon the thatched roofs of the village. Each roof glistened in the dim gray light, crusted with thin veins of ice that caught the dawn like trembling glass. The air was still, the kind of silence that presses against the ribs, a silence that feels watched. Even the wind, which usually prowled the valley at this hour, seemed to hold its breath. From the distant fields came the faint smell of earth and cold hay. Smoke curled from a few chimneys, reluctant, as though uncertain whether warmth was permitted this morning. Somewhere a dog barked once and was quickly silenced. In the square, at the village's heart, a woman knelt. Her dress was rough wool, soaked dark at the knees where frost had melted beneath her. The rope that bound her wrists was coarse hemp, thick and old, leaving small ridges of blood where it dug into her flesh. Her breath came slow and visible in the chill, rising in tiny clouds that drifted upward and vanished, like prayers left unanswered. They called her a witch. The word carried a kind of reverence in their mouths, a mixture of awe and terror. It rolled off the priest's tongue like a curse and an absolution all at once. No one knew quite what she had done. Some said she spoke to the crows. Others whispered that she healed a child with herbs not blessed by the church. One swore he saw her walking beneath the moonlight, barefoot in the fields, whispering words that made the wheat bend toward her. Truth had little to do with it. Fear, after all, was easier to believe. The crowd gathered before sunrise. Farmers, wives, shepherd boys, even the old miller whose knees ached too much to kneel at Massachusetts. They came as they always did, faces half hidden in scarves, eyes lowered, hearts caught somewhere between piety and dread. They said they came to witness justice, but deep down, each came for another reason, to remind themselves that they were safe, that someone else bore the weight of their sin. The priest stood before her, a small man swallowed by his robes. The morning light found the lines on his face, each one carved by confession and doubt. His voice quivered as he began the prayers. Latin words spilled from his lips like stones falling into water. Domini, miserere nobis. He lifted the cross toward the sky, but the sky was indifferent, pale and cold and vast. A blackbird landed on the church spire, its cries slicing through the silence like a blade. The villagers crossed themselves, murmuring a sign, but no one could agree what kind. The woman did not look at the priest. Her gaze was fixed on something beyond the square, perhaps the forest's edge, where the trees stood silent and skeletal, or perhaps something no one else could see. Her lips moved once, barely, but no sound followed. A child tugged at his mother's cloak. "Why won't she speak?" he whispered. The woman hushed him quickly, eyes darting toward the priest. "Because the devil speaks through her tongue," she said. But her voice faltered. Behind the accused stood the stake, tall, rough-hewn, its wood darkened by last night's rain. The scent of it mingled with the faint, acrid ghost of ash from the last burning. Around it, bundles of straw had been arranged with careful hands. The villagers had done this often enough that ritual had replaced horror. Every motion was practiced. Every hesitation was swallowed. And yet, today, something felt different. Perhaps it was the frost, or the silence that even the birds seemed to obey. Perhaps it was the woman's calm, her stillness, as if she already knew the ending, as if this moment were merely the turning of a page already written. The priest's voice trembled as he spoke the final words. "Let this fire cleanse the wickedness among us, that no shadow may fall upon our faith." No one cheered. The words felt brittle, fragile. A man stepped forward, carrying the torch. The flames sputtered, its orange light flickering across his face. His eyes were empty, not cruel, only resigned. He had lit this fire before, and each time he swore would be the last. But duty was a heavy chain, and habit, in time, becomes faith. When the torch was raised, its light struck the frost, scattering gold through the mist. The villagers held their breath. The woman's eyes reflected the fire, not in fear, but in recognition, as though she saw in it some truth that none of them could bear. Somewhere behind the crowd, a child began to cry. The flame met the straw. A hiss, then a crackle. The sound grew, soft at first, then hungry, climbing upward, devouring air. Smoke billowed, thick and gray, swallowing the square in its breath. The fire took the stake, the straw, the rope, and finally the hem of her dress. She closed her eyes. For a moment, it seemed she was praying, but when her lips moved, it was not the language of priests. It was older, the language of rivers and roots, of mothers whispering lullabies in the dark. Her words were lost to the roar of the fire, but something in them made the priest's heart falter. He stepped back, clutching the cross to his chest. The crowd murmured, "She calls the devil. She curses us. She speaks to the smoke." But the smoke did not rise in curses. It moved upward gently, curling like the shape of wings. When her voice stopped, only the wind answered, a low moan winding through the alleys, rattling shutters, whispering against the church door. And then there was only fire. The air shimmered with heat. Sparks floated like dying stars. The frost melted away, leaving the cobblestones slick and black. When it was done, the priest lowered his cross. His hand shook. "May her soul be judged in heaven," he said. No one replied. The villagers turned away, their faces pale in the cold. One by one, they drifted back to their homes, to their hearths, their fields, their unspoken guilt. The child who had wept was carried away, his tears freezing on his cheeks. The square emptied until only the wind remained. It whispered through the charred wood, stirring a few dying embers. Smoke curled upward and vanished into the gray sky. That night, frost crept once more across the roofs, as though the earth itself sought to forget what it had seen. The moon rose, thin and cold, an eye half shut against sorrow. The village slept fitfully. In the priest's house, the candle burned low. He sat at his table, the cross before him. Its shadow trembled against the wall. The smell of smoke still clung to his robes. He could hear the faint echo of her voice, that strange prayer in the fire's roar, and no amount of prayer could silence it. He whispered, "Lord, forgive me," but the words felt hollow like stones in his mouth. He looked toward the window. Outside, a blackbird perched on the sill, feathers glistening with frost. It stared at him, unblinking. For a long moment, neither moved. Then the bird gave a single, sharp cry and flew into the night. The priest closed his eyes. Sleep had not come. By morning, the sky was the color of ash. The village woke in uneasy silence. Smoke still lingered faintly in the air, clinging to clothes and hair and memory. The women went to fetch water, their buckets scraping against the well's frozen rim. The men returned to their fields, their plows cutting through hard soil that refused to yield. No one spoke of the burning. Yet every conversation bent around it like wind around a stone. In the square, the stake still stood black and skeletal. Children were told not to look at it, but they did. They always did. They whispered to one another that if you stared long enough, you could still see her face in the char, her eyes open, her lips moving. By noon, a thin snow began to fall. It settled over the square, covering the ash in a white shroud. The wind carried whispers through the village. Not words exactly, but memories. The sound of her voice, the quiet before the fire, the weeping of a child. At dusk, an old woman crossed the square. She paused before the stake, her back bent, her hands shaking. She had known the condemned once, years ago, when they were both young and laughter came easily. She bent down, touched the blackened wood, and whispered, "We remember." Her words vanished into the cold. But for an instant, the wind stilled, as if listening. That night, the dreams returned. The villagers saw flames when they closed their eyes. Some heard her voice again, soft, rhythmic, unafraid. Others saw her gaze lifted toward the dawn. The priest dreamed he stood again before the fire, but this time the woman spoke his name. He awoke trembling, the cross clutched to his chest, the candle guttering low. Outside, the wind howled. The church bell swayed, though no hand touched it. Days passed. The frost thickened. The silence grew heavier. But something had shifted in the village, a small, invisible crack in the walls of certainty. The word which was no longer spoken with conviction, only with unease. Children began to leave small tokens near the stake. A sprig of lavender, a scrap of cloth, a feather. No one knew why they did it. Perhaps some memory older than faith compelled them. The instinct to honor would have been taken unjustly. The priest saw these offerings one morning and said nothing. He only bowed his head and whispered prayer he did not finish. Weeks later, the snow melted. The fields turned to mud. Life resumed, but not as before. When the wind passed through the square, it carried the faint scent of smoke. And when night fell, some swore they saw a flicker of light near the stake, a flame too small to warm, too stubborn to die. The villagers began to say that the fire had not burned her, only freed her, that her spirit walked the fields at dawn, her breath turning frost to dew. No one could prove it. No one dared to. But sometimes on the coldest mornings, a blackbird would perch upon the spire, and its song would echo through the valley, low, mournful, endless. And those who heard it would pause in their work, hearts caught in some memory they could not name. And so the story lived on, not in words but in silence, in the way the villagers avoided the square at night, in the way the priest's sermons grew softer, less certain, in the way the frost seemed to cling longer to the earth each November. Because fire may end a life, but it cannot silence truth. It cannot unmake the memory of eyes that face death without fear. And sometimes when dawn breaks over the valley and the world lies hushed beneath the first frost, one might almost see her there, standing in the square, her gaze turned toward the heavens. Not pleading, not cursing, only remembering. And somewhere far above, unseen behind clouds of ash and light, perhaps heaven remembers too. A bell tolls in the distance, low and hollow. It rolls across the moors like a lament carried on the wind, a sound older than mercy, older than judgment itself. Each peal quivers in a mist, a slow heartbeat of iron echoing through the valley of wet stone and ash. Beneath that mournful bell, they lead her forward, barefoot, shackled not by chains but by fear. Her feet sink into the mud, thick, cold, clinging, a mire that pulls at her every step, as though the earth itself resists the cruelty it's being made to witness. Her hair is tangled with nettles and smoke. It smells of the pyres she's seen, of the fires that devour names before dawn. The onlookers, villagers, farmers, widows, stand pressed together beneath their hoods. None meet her eyes. Some whisper prayers into their hands, hoping their breath might disguise their trembling. The inquisitor walks ahead. His robes sweep the ground like a dark tide. He moves without sound, without hesitation, a silhouette carved from faith and shadow. The cross that hangs from his neck catches the weak light of dawn, gleaming for an instant before disappearing again into the folds of his garment. They say he was chosen by God. He says he only listens. The chapel waits beyond the square, a small stone structure once meant for song and reflection, now hollowed into something colder. A theater of accusation. The door creaks open, and candlelight spills across the mud like the blood of wax, pale and trembling. Inside, the air is heavy with incense and rot. The scent of damp parchment and rusted iron mingles with the soft hiss of rain against the window. Relics line the altar, bones, broken chalices, the skull of a saint. But beside them, parchment scrolls lie unfurled, marked with the confessions of those who spoke to save their breath. The accused stands before them, and the silence tightens. Her pulse is the only sound she can hear, That, and the faint murmur of a psalm whispered by the monks, their voices weaving like smoke through the shadows. She remembers the river. How, as a girl, she washed linen there. How the water moved swiftly, carrying away the dirt, the weight, the small sins of living. It was a place of renewal, of forgetting. Now will be her judge. They will cast her into it, bound and trembling. If she floats, she is guilty. If she sinks, she is pure. Either way, she will not return. The Inquisitor begins his litany. His voice is calm, measured, unwavering, each word pressed into the air like wax in a parchment. He recites the charges. Heretics whispers, herbs found in her home, the strange light said to glow from her window at midnight. Every accusation falls like a stone into her chest. He asks if she confesses. She says nothing. Her voice has long since abandoned her, fled to some distant corner of her soul where fear cannot reach. He raises his hand. A monk steps forward with a quill. Ink gleams on the tip like a drop of venom. The confession lies blank before them, waiting for her mark. But still she is silent. The Inquisitor's eyes, cold, glacial, hold her as one might study a dying candle. The truth, he says softly, is salvation. She closes her eyes, and in that darkness she sees the river again, sunlight skipping across its surface, her mother's laughter in the reeds. For a moment, she is there. For a moment, she is free. Then the ropes tighten. They lead her out into the rain. The sky has turned the color of lead, and the wind carries the stench of peat fires and wet wool. The crowd has gathered again, faces pale beneath the drizzle, eyes fixed upon the spectacle of righteousness. The river churns ahead, swollen with autumn rain, restless and brown. A wooden platform juts over its current, slick with moss. The monks begin to chant. Their voices rise and fall in rhythm with the tolling bell, weaving sorrow and ritual into a single sound that feels both holy and cruel. The Inquisitor stands beside her. He looks almost tired now, as if burdened by the weight of his own certainty. The water, he murmurs, knows no lie. She glances at the current, at the swirling foam where the river bends toward the forest. It reminds her of linen twisting in the wash, of days before the war, before the hunger, before the whispers that turned neighbors into judges. They bind her wrists, her ankles. The rope bites deep, rough against her skin. Someone presses a wooden cross to her lips. She does not kiss it. For a moment, the wind stops. The rain stills. The world holds its breath. Then she is cast forward. The water erupts around her. A violent hiss as body meets river, as faith meets flesh. Cold swallows her whole. The current claws at her, pulling, twisting, dragging her down. Her lungs burn. The taste of silt fills her mouth. She fights, not to survive, but to be remembered. Above, the chants falter. The rope tugs once, twice, then slackens. The Inquisitor watches the ripples fade. His expression does not change. He turns to the monks, nods once, and the bell tolls again. But the river keeps its secrets. Hours later, when the crowd has gone and the torches burn low, a figure lingers by the water's edge. A boy no older than 12, the blacksmith's son. He peers into the current, watching the silver threads of moonlight dance upon the surface. Then, faintly, he sees something, a scrap of fabric caught on a root, a curl of hair like riverweed. He steps closer. The current sighs against the stones. For a moment, he thinks he hears her voice, not a scream, but a whisper, something softer, older, a wordless song carried on the tide. He runs home and tells no one. By morning, the chapel stands empty. The Inquisitor has moved on to the next village. The parchment lies dry, the ink sealed, the names written in careful hand. Another soul accounted for. Another victory in the war against unseen devils. But in the fields beyond the town, the river has changed. It moves differently now, slower, heavier, as if burdened by what it has been forced to keep. The reeds bend with the current, whispering in voices that sound like prayer. And sometimes, when the fog drifts low over the water, the villagers swear they see her, a shape of pale light moving just beneath the surface, following the flow downstream. Some say it's her ghost. Others say it's only the moon. But every time the bell tolls, the river stirs. And somewhere, deep beneath that dark surface, something ancient listens. Night falls again upon the moors. The wind rises, carrying the faint scent of iron and rain. In the distance, wolves cry to one another across the fields, thin voices swallowed by fog. The monastery bell tolls once more, softer now, as if in remembrance rather than decree. Inside the chapel, the candles gutter in their sconces. Wax drips in slow rivulets down the stone, like tears too tired to fall. The inquisitor kneels before the altar. His hands are steady, but his prayer falters. He asks for forgiveness, not for what he has done, but for the doubt that lingers when the night grows too still. He dreams of the river. He dreams of the moment the rope went slack, of the silence that followed, and the look in her eyes before she vanished beneath the water. It was not fear, he realizes. It was peace. The thought haunts him. In the morning, he writes her name in his private ledger, a list no one will ever see. He marks it not under condemned, but under unknown. And though he will go on to condemn many more, he will never again stand so close to the edge of the river. Years pass. The monastery crumbles. The scrolls decay. The wars that once burned across kingdoms fade into stories told by firelight. But the river endures, same current, same whisper. It threads through the valley like a scar through flesh, eternal and unhealed. Travelers who pass through speak of strange lights at night, of bells tolling when no wind moves. Some say the water sings, a hymn too old to name. And in that song, if you listen closely, you can hear the memory of a woman who would not confess, and the echo of a world that mistook silence for guilt. Because the river remembers. It remembers every name, every cry, every lie spoken in the name of purity. It remembers the inquisitor's voice, the villager's fear, the boy's trembling hands. It carries them all, the innocent and the cruel alike, into the sea, where all things are washed clean, where all judgments are drowned. And when the moon rises over the valley, the mist gathers like breath upon the water. It curls and twists, forming shapes that shift and dissolve, until for an instant it looks as though someone stands there again, barefoot in the current, hair tangled with nettles, eyes open to the stars. The bell tolls one final time. Its echo fades into the hills, into the silence that follows all endings. The camera drifts upward, over the dark river, over the ruined chapel, over the fields silvered by frost. The wind carries the faintest trace of her voice, not a curse, not a plea, but a promise. And as the scene fades to black, only the river remains, eternal, unjudging, whispering to the stones, I carried the truth away. The year's final harvest lies rotting in the fields. Grain heads bow under their own weight, not in reverence, but resignation, as if the land itself has lost faith in the hands that till it. The stalks whisper against one another in the wind, a dry rattle like bones beneath the soil. Where laughter once echoed, where children once chased crows from the sheaves, there's only the hush of decay. A village starved not of bread, but of trust. Smoke curls from hearths, pale and reluctant. Its scent no longer brings warmth. It carries the sting of burning herbs and fear. Inside cottages, candles burn low, their flames wavering as though frightened to be seen. Mothers hush their children at the faintest knock. Dogs no longer bark at strangers, they cower. Every door is a confession waiting to be spoken. The bell tolls. 3 times, slow, deliberate. The sound rolls down the valley like thunder reluctant to die. By the third toll, every soul knows the tribunal is gathering. In the hall, where cold light seeps through narrow windows, the air feels thick enough to choke on. Men sit in judgment, wool cloaks heavy on their shoulders, rings glinting like small suns upon their fingers. They do not look at one another. They stare at parchment, at ink, at the symbols of righteousness that allow them to forget they are merely men. Behind them, a crucifix watches, silent witness to the trembling of mortal hands. Upon the floor, two figures kneel, a mother and her daughter, bound by rope, united by fear. The rope bites the girl's wrists. She is too young to have scars there. Her mother's palms are cracked and calloused, shaped by a lifetime of harvests now left to rot. She kneels straight-backed, dignity her last possession. The elder rises. His beard is streaked with gray, his eyes sharp as flint. When he speaks, the hall stills. The signs are clear, he declares. A calf born dead, the milk turns sour, the wind that speaks in tongues through the trees. Darkness has entered our midst. His words hang in the air like frost, delicate, beautiful, and deadly. A murmur ripples through the crowd. Some cross themselves, others whisper prayers beneath their breath. No one looks at the accused. To meet their eyes would be to see the reflection of their own doubt. The parchment trembles in the elder's hand. He reads the charges, communion with spirits, invocation of storms, the whispering of unholy names. He knows these words too well. They have become his shield against his own trembling heart. When he looks upon the girl, he sees not evil, but fear. Still, he cannot stop. To pause would be to feel, and feeling has no place in holy work. The girl's name is Mara. 14 years, hair the color of burnt wheat, eyes wide with terror. When she speaks, her voice is barely more than a breath. I spoke to the wind, she says. I only asked it to carry my father's soul home. Her words are simple, honest, too honest. The crowd stirs uneasily. To them, even innocence sounds dangerous when wrapped in poetry. The elder lowers his gaze. He remembers his own daughter, buried 2 winters ago, taken by fever. For a heartbeat, compassion flickers, a forbidden ember. Then he crushes it beneath duty. Alara, the mother, lifts her head. Her eyes burn with something stronger than defiance. It is grief made holy. She speaks softly, her words trembling but clear. My child is not touched by darkness, she says. If storms have come, it is because the heavens weep for what we've become. Gasps ripple through the room. Someone spits on the floor. The elder strikes his staff for silence. But the echo of her words lingers, rising into the rafters like trapped birds. Outside, clouds gather over the steeple. Ravens circle, their cries sharp against the thinning light. The world itself seems to hold its breath. Hours pass. The tribunal debates behind closed doors while the village waits outside. Men pace. Women clutch rosaries until their knuckles whiten. A child begins to cry. His mother hushes him with shaking hands. From somewhere beyond the hill, thunder rolls, distant, uncertain. At last, the doors creak open. The elder steps forward, parchment in hand. His lips move, but his voice falters. He clears his throat, forces the words to life. Alara of the valley and her daughter, Mara, stand guilty of consorting with the devil's breath, of bringing ruin upon this land. His hand trembles. He presses the seal against the wax. The red spreads across the parchment like spilled blood. When the seal hardens, it is done. Alara bows her head. Her lips move in prayer, not for forgiveness, but for grace in the face of cruelty. Mara begins to weep, and Alara draws her close, their foreheads touching. Do not be afraid, she whispers. They cannot burn what the light has already claimed. The guards move forward. Chains clink. The crowd parts in silence. Some avert their eyes. Others stare, unable to look away. The air tastes of iron and ash. Outside, the pyre waits, wood stacked high, pitch glistening in the fading sun. The wind howls down the valley, scattering leaves like lost souls. Ravens perch along the eaves, black eyes gleaming. Even the sky seems to dim in mourning. Alara steps forward first. Her bare feet leave prints in the mud, soft and deliberate. Mara follows, her face streaked with tears and soot. The ropes tighten. The crowd exhales as one. The executioner lowers his torch. A voice from the crowd cries out, "Mercy!" but it is swallowed by the wind. The torch touches the wood. Fire licks upward, timid at first, then hungry. The smell of pitch and pine fills the air, thick and choking. Sparks leap into the dusk, small souls fleeing to the heavens. Mara's scream pierces the night, high, clear, and terribly human. Alara does not scream. She closes her eyes and lifts her face to the rising flames, her lips moving in silence. For a moment, she seems beyond the reach of pain, her body turning to light before the crowd's horrified gaze. The flames dance like tongues of judgment. But above the crackle, above the roar, another sound begins, the bell. It tolls again, 3 times, slow, deliberate, as if to mark not death, but warning. When the third toll fades, the square is empty. The pyre crackles, then quiets, leaving only embers that glow like dying stars. Ash drifts through the air, soft, gray, and endless. The wind carries it over the rooftops, over the fields, over the graves. By morning, it will cover the valley like snow. That night, no one sleeps. The village feels hollow, as though the earth itself has drawn away. Windows remain shuttered. Children whisper of ghosts walking the lanes. The men drink in silence, staring into cups that reflect nothing but darkness. The women wash the soot from their doorsteps, their hands trembling, though the water runs clear. In the elder's house, the candle burns low. He sits alone, parchment spread before him. The decree, now dry and stiff. His hand hovers above it, uncertain. The ink has bled slightly, the letters warped by sweat. He cannot remember when his hand began to shake. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters. He thinks he hears a voice in it, faint like the whisper of a name. Alara. He tells himself it is the storm. But in his chest, guilt moves like a living thing. The next morning, the village wakes to silence. The fog hangs low, swallowing the steeple, the rooftops, the fields. Where the pyre stood, only a circle of black earth remains. Children approach it timidly, their feet sinking into the ash. One finds a fragment of rope, half burned, half intact. He picks it up, but his mother snatches it from his hands. "Leave it," she whispers. "Some things are not meant to be touched." By midday, the elder gathers the villagers. He speaks of purification, of faith tested and proven. His voice wavers, but none dare question him. When he finishes, the people disperse, not to celebrate, but to forget. Yet forgetting is harder than fear. As dusk falls, strange things begin to happen. Cows refuse to give milk. The well water turns murky. The wind, when it moves through the fields, carries whispers. No one understands the words, but all recognize the tone. It is sorrow. In the nights that follow, dreams plague the villagers. They see the pyre burning again, the flames reaching higher, the sky full of ravens. In every dream, a woman's voice calls from within the fire. "Do you feel pure now?" The elder stops, sleeping altogether. He spends his nights at the church, kneeling before the crucifix. But even there, shadows gather. He begins to wonder if the darkness they sought to banish had never been in Alara at all, but in themselves. Winter arrives early that year. Frost creeps across the windows like ghostly vines. The last of the stored grain spoils. Children fall ill, and though no one speaks of it, everyone feels the same unspoken truth. Something has been broken that cannot be mended. At the edge of the field, near the blackened circle, A single wildflower blooms in the snow, pale, fragile, impossibly alive. Some say it grows from the ashes of the pyre. Others say it's a trick of the frost. But every morning, the villagers pass it in silence, afraid to pluck it, afraid to look too long. And so, life continues, not in peace, but in penance. The valley breathes, shallow and uncertain, waiting for spring that may never come. The bell still hangs in the steeple, its clapper rusted, its song unsung. Yet on certain nights, when the wind is right, the faintest sound can still be heard drifting through the mist, a woman's prayer, spoken softly, carried by the wind that once answered her. And though the fields lie barren, and the river runs slow, the land remembers. The earth holds memory the way a wound holds pain, quietly forever. The story of Alara and Mara will fade from tongues, twisted into fable, reshaped into warning. But beneath every sermon, beneath every whispered prayer, the same fear will linger, that when the fire came for them, it was not evil that burned. It was innocence mistaken for light. In this damp stone cell, the walls breathe with me. Cold exhales from them like the lungs of some sleeping creature. The stones are slick, sweating in the night, and my fingers trace their uneven surface until I find the little grooves I have made. 1, 2, 3, each line a mark of time, or maybe of surrender. I no longer know how many days have passed. The crosses blur together, fading like prayers half remembered. I used to pray differently, kneeling, light streaming through stained glass, the scent of incense thick in the air. Now my prayers are carved into the wall with my nails, bleeding into the stone. I whisper them not to God, but to the silence that has taken his place. Above me, the monks chant. I hear them through the cracks in the floor. Their voices rise and fall like the tide, each syllable clean and pure, untouched by the mud and hunger below. Kyrie eleison. Lord, have mercy. I mouth the words with them, though mercy has long since become a foreign tongue. The straw beneath me is damp. My body has grown thin, my skin the color of candle wax. Sometimes I watch my breath rise in pale clouds and imagine it leaving me for good, floating upward toward the chapel where the air smells of oil and burning wicks. They call me witch. The word once cut me open, but now it is only an echo, like a bell rung in another century. I no longer flinch when I hear it. It has become my name, my prayer, my curse. The Inquisitor comes at dawn. He walks with slow steps, the soles of his boots whispering over the stone. I hear the rattle of his keys before I see his face. He always carries parchment and ink, the instruments of salvation. Confess, he says, as he always does, his voice like the scraping of a quill. Confess, and your soul may yet be saved. He believes he's offering me mercy. He believes the parchment will open the gates of heaven if I only write the words they wish to see. But my soul, if I still possess one, no longer bargains. I look at him, not in defiance, not in hatred, but in something quieter. Pity, perhaps. He does not know that his salvation is built on the ruin of others. He sets the parchment before me, smooth and white, like untouched snow. The ink glistens black, the feathered quill trembling in the candlelight. I can almost see the words already written there, my confession waiting to take form, though my hand is not yet moved. I do not touch it. He waits. His eyes, pale as winter light, study me. I wonder what he sees, a woman undone or a creature unworthy of grace. Perhaps he sees both. When he leaves, he takes the parchment with him, still blank. I hear his footsteps retreat, echoing upward into the morning air. When the door closes, the world grows small again. Only the drip of water from the ceiling keeps time. I press my forehead against the stone, cold and wet. Somewhere beyond these walls, I imagine the sun climbing over the abbey's roof, warming the bell tower, gilding the mist that hangs over the courtyard. I used to walk that courtyard. I remember the dew gathering on the grass, the sound of the sparrows waking. I remember laughter, too, mine, light and careless, before the word which found me. They came at dusk. Their torches burned low, their faces hidden by hoods. They called my name, and I stepped outside, thinking perhaps someone was ill, that they needed herbs or healing. I had always given freely. The old women came to me for fever, the children for cuts and coughs. The men never came, but they watched from a distance, whispering. When the Inquisitor's men bound my hands, I asked what wrong I had done. One of them said, "You speak to the wind." I told him I spoke to no one, that the wind does not answer. But he smiled as if he had found truth in my denial. I remember the torchlight flickering against the fields, the smell of smoke and wet earth. I remember thinking how quiet the world had become, that even the crickets had gone still. Now, in this cell, that same silence lives inside me. It has settled in my bones like frost. Sometimes I dream. In my dreams, the walls open into forests. I walk barefoot among the trees, the ground soft beneath me, the air rich with pine and rain. I hear the stream where I once gathered water. I see the faces of those I healed. They do not speak, but their eyes are kind. Then the dream collapses, and I wake to the sound of chains clinking in the dark. They brought me to the chapel once, before the trial. I remember the flicker of candles, the Inquisitor's voice echoing through the nave. He spoke of heresy, of temptation, of the devil's whisper in the ear of women. He said my soul was not yet lost, that repentance could cleanse me. But repentance for what? For knowing the herbs that ease a fever? For speaking to the dying when the priest would not come? For listening to the wind when it carried the voice of the world? The abbey bell tolls now. Its sound fills the air like smoke. It used to call me to prayer. Now it tolls for me. I imagine the monks gathered above, their hoods low, their hands folded. They will not look at me when they pass. To see me is to see their own doubt reflected. I press my palms together and whisper, "Forgive them." But even as I say it, the words crumble. Perhaps forgiveness is not meant for this place. The morning light seeps through a slit in the wall. It moves slowly across the floor, golden dust swirling in the beam. I stretch my hand toward it, feeling its faint warmth on my skin. For a moment, I imagine it is the touch of another hand, my mother's, perhaps, or the child I once lost. I close my eyes and let it rest there. Footsteps again. The door creaks open. This time, it is not the Inquisitor, but a monk. Young, his face pale beneath his hood. He brings bread and a cup of water. When he sets them down, he avoids my eyes. But as he turns to leave, I whisper, "Brother." He stops. The air between us holds still. "Do you believe," I ask, "that God hears me here?" He says nothing, but his shoulders tremble. Then he leaves, closing the door gently, as though afraid the sound itself might wound me. The bread tastes of ash, the water of iron. Still I eat. Hunger is the only prayer left that still receives an answer. Days pass, or nights, I can no longer tell. Time here is a creature that slithers without sound. My body weakens. My thoughts come slower, heavier. Yet something inside me begins to harden, like iron in the forge. I'm not what they say I am. I'm not the devil's bride. I am not the whisper in the storm. I am a woman who remembers. I remember the soil beneath my nails, the smell of rain, the laughter of a child in the fields. I remember kindness. I remember love. These are my spells now, memories no fire can burn. One night, I hear singing, not from the chapel above, but from the courtyard outside. A woman's voice, faint, trembling. It takes me a moment to realize it is my own. I am humming a song I once sang while grinding herbs. The melody drifts through the cracks like smoke, rising toward the moonlight I cannot see. When the Inquisitor comes again, his patience is gone. His words are colder now, sharper. He speaks of the stake, of fire, of purification. I watch his lips move, but his voice seems far away, like thunder beyond the hills. He lays the parchment down once more. "Write," he says, and I do, but not the words he expects. I write my name, and beneath it, I write only this: I am still his creation. He stares at it, his brow furrowing. He cannot destroy what he does not understand. He takes the parchment, folds it, and leaves without another word. The next morning, they come for me. The door opens and light pours in, harsh, blinding. My legs tremble as they lift me from a straw. The air outside is cold, sharp with dew. The courtyard stretches wide, the gallows dark against the pale sky. A sparrow lands upon the wooden beam. It chirps once, small and bright, before taking flight. They tie my hands. The rope bites into my skin. I can smell the damp wood, the smoke of last night's torches. The crowd gathers, silent. Faces I once knew stare back at me, their eyes heavy with fear, not hatred. The inquisitor reads from his parchment. Words of sin, words of salvation. His voice trembles now, though he tries to steady it. When he finishes, I lift my eyes to the sky. The clouds drift slow, heavy with rain. I open my mouth to speak, but no sound comes. Instead, I breathe, deeply, fully, for the first time in what feels like years. The bell tolls again. Once, twice. Its sound rolls across the courtyard, across the fields, across the world. In that moment, I am not afraid. The wind brushes my face, soft as a mother's hand. I think of the crosses carved in my cell, of the prayers that never reached heaven, of the sparrow taking flight. And I understand. The word which was never a curse. It was a crown they could not see. The rope tightens. The world fades. But the sound of the bell remains, echoing long after my breath has gone, carrying my name into the morning air. Snow falls like ash upon the castle courtyard, a quiet blizzard of ghosts descending from the pale, indifferent heavens. Each flake drifts like a memory of something once warm, now turned cold. Beneath the gray breath of winter, the crowd waits, still as stone effigies, each face etched with the same mixture of fear and fascination. The courtyard, ancient and worn, holds the weight of centuries. Its cobblestones are slick with frost, the air sharp with the iron scent of water and rust. From the battlements above, a banner hangs limp, frozen in place, its faded crest fluttering only when the wind sighs through. The accused stands barefoot upon the ice-laced earth. Her skin is pale, almost translucent, veins blooming blue beneath the surface like rivers under glass. Chains hug her wrists and ankles, their chill biting deeper than the winter. She does not shiver, or perhaps the cold has long since conquered her nerves. Her eyes, wide but calm, drift between the faces surrounding her. Farmers, soldiers, mothers, the priest. They do not see a woman. They see a reflection of their own terror, something to condemn, so they may forget the darkness in themselves. The priest steps forward, his robes whispering against the ground. He moves with the weariness of a man long acquainted with death, his breath rising in small, trembling clouds. In his hand, the cross glimmers faintly, not with holiness, but with the last light of a dying afternoon. He murmurs words in Latin, voice low and steady, each syllable sinking into the silence like pebbles cast into a frozen pond. He dips the cross into the trough before him, a long, narrow basin of icy water drawn from the river at dawn. The surface ripples once, briefly, then stills again, reflecting the colorless sky. To be pure, he says softly, is to surrender. No one speaks. Even the wind seems to pause, as if waiting to see whether mercy still has a place in this courtyard. Two guards step forward. Armor clinks. Their breath steams through the slits of their helmets. The older one, broad-shouldered, eyes hollow with the fatigue of too many winters, grips the chain. The younger one hesitates, his hands trembling inside his gauntlets. The condemned woman glances toward him. Their eyes meet. A flicker, recognition or pity or memory, passes between them. Then, gently as men can lift someone they have already condemned, they raise her from the ground. Her chains clatter like distant bells, an unholy liturgy. When she sinks, says the priest, his tone echoing the scripture that has long since forgotten compassion, the water shall bear her guilt to the depths. When she floats, her sin shall rise for all to see. The words spread through the crowd like frost creeping over glass. The people nod, some crossing themselves, others clutching at rosaries. They are desperate to believe the world makes sense, that innocence and guilt can be measured in breath and buoyancy. The woman closes her eyes. A prayer trembles on her lips, too soft to hear. Her words dissolve into the wind. Snow thickens. It gathers on her shoulders, her hair, the chains, the trough. The sky seems to lower, pressing down upon the courtyard, as if heaven itself can no longer bear to watch. The guards lower her. Her feet touch the edge of the trough, skin paling against the iron rim. Then, with one slow, fateful motion, they release her. The water receives her with a muted gasp. For a heartbeat, all is still. Her reflection trembles, then vanishes beneath the rippling surface. The crowd leans forward, a single organism, holding its breath. The priest tightens his grip on the cross. The wind curls through the courtyard like a living thing, whistling through armor, through the gaps in the stone, through hearts. Seconds stretch like hours. And then she sinks. A murmur spreads. Relief, fear, confusion. The priest's voice breaks the spell. God has judged. The water speaks. But even as the words leave him, doubt shadows his face. The young guard stares down at the trough. His heart hammers in his chest. Beneath his armor, he feels the weight of his own breath. Heavy, guilty, human. He remembers her voice from before this moment. Not the cries of accusation, but the song she once sang in the market square. She sold herbs, he recalls, her hands always smelling faintly of rosemary and ash. She once offered him a sprig for courage. He wonders if she remembered him when they bound her wrists. The priest raises his hand for the final blessing, but the wind snatches the words away. Around him, the villagers begin to disperse, their eyes avoiding one another. Their footsteps crunch through the snow, leaving behind a trail of silence. The young guard does not move. He watches the water. The surface, once rippling, is now perfectly smooth, a mirror reflecting only the gray sky and the tower above. The sound of the world narrows to a single ringing note, the faint hum of the wind through the banners. The priest approaches him, weary, cautious. "Come," he says. "It is done." The guard does not answer. He kneels beside the trough. Frost gathers at the edges. His reflection wavers, two faces, his and hers, merging in the trembling water. He reaches in. The cold bites like a blade, but he does not stop. His hands find the chain. The links are heavy, slick with ice. He pulls. The priest gasps. "Stop! You defy God's will." The guard doesn't look up. His jaw trembles, not from the cold, but from something older, shame. He pulls harder. The chain scrapes against the rim. Then, her face breaks the surface. Pale, still, beautiful in a terrible way. Her hair, black as river weed, fans out across the water. Snowflakes land upon her cheeks and do not melt. The priest steps forward, furious and afraid. She has been judged. To disturb her is heresy. The guard looks up at him, eyes blazing beneath the visor. "If innocence drowns," he says, voice raw, "then perhaps it is not her God who judges us, but ours." The words hang in the air, heavier than the bell that begins to toll from the chapel tower. 1, 2, 3 chimes. Each toll vibrates through the courtyard, through the bones of the castle, through the hearts of those who remain. The priest stumbles backward. His lips move, prayers, confessions, excuses, but no sound comes. He looks to the heavens as though they might answer. But only snow replies, soft and endless. The young guard lifts her from a trough. Her body is lighter than he expected, as if the water had taken her weight, her pain. He lays her gently upon the stones. Her eyes remain closed, but there is a strange peace in her face, the kind that comes only when suffering ends. The priest drops to his knees. His cross clatters against the stones. "Forgive us," he whispers. "Forgive us for mistaking fear for faith." The guard stands, looking out toward the village. Beyond the walls, smoke curls from the chimneys. Ordinary life continuing as though the world has not shifted. But something inside him has changed forever. He looks again at the woman's still form. Snow gathers on her chest like a burial shroud. Around her, the courtyard is quiet. So quiet he can hear the drip of water from the trough, the distant caw of a raven perched on the battlements. A gust of wind sweeps through, scattering the snow. It lifts her hair for a moment, as if some invisible hand reaches to touch her one last time. The guard closes his eyes. In that darkness, he sees not her face, but all the faces before hers. All who had been silenced by fear, burned or drowned or buried beneath the weight of superstition. He feels their voices rising like the wind, a whisper, then a wail. The priest stands slowly, shaking. "You do not understand," he mutters. "Without fear, they will turn to chaos." The guard looks at him. Perhaps chaos is just truth without chains. The words strike like a spark in dry straw. The priest turns away, clutching his robes as though they might shield him from the storm gathering both outside and within. The guard kneels one last time beside the woman. He presses his palm against the cold stones beside her hand. Snow gathers between his fingers. The world feels impossibly still, the kind of stillness that comes just before history changes course. From the chapel, faint voices begin to sing, a hymn to cleanse the air of sin. But the melody wavers, lost in the wind. As he stands, the first light of dawn creeps over the horizon. A faint red glow spills across the courtyard walls, staining the snow the color of blood. The guard looks toward it, unsure whether it is sunrise or fire, whether it marks an ending or a beginning. The priest follows his gaze. "Do you hear it?" he whispers. "What?" "The wind." Indeed, the wind is rising again, howling through the arches, rattling the iron gates, carrying with it something ancient and restless. To some, it sounds like lamentation. To others, rebellion. The guard watches as the light climbs higher, painting her face with warmth she'll never feel. He whispers, almost to himself, she was never the witch. It was the world that burned her. He removes his helm and places it beside her, a small act of penance, or perhaps devotion. Then, without another word, he turns and walks toward the gate. Each step echoes, hollow and final. The priest remains behind, clutching his cross, staring down at the still water. For the first time, he sees his own reflection clearly, and it frightens him. Above them, the last torch flickers out. Smoke drifts upward, curling into the pale sky. The wind softens, and with it comes a strange quiet, the kind that carries both mourning and promise. The water in the trough lies smooth once more, reflecting the blood-red dawn. And beneath that fragile light, the earth seems to breathe again, as if relieved that the spectacle has ended, yet mourning that it ever began. Somewhere beyond the castle walls, a wolf howls, long, mournful, and free. Its voice pierces the cold morning air, echoing across the valley like a reminder that even in the heart of cruelty, something wild and innocent still survives. The guard reaches the outer gate. Behind him, the bell tolls once more, one final note, deep and somber, carried by the wind until it fades into silence. He does not look back. The snow falls harder now, sweeping across the courtyard, erasing footprints, softening edges. Soon there will be no trace of the crowd, the priest, or the condemned. Only stone, water, and wind, witnesses that forget nothing. And as dawn breaks fully over the land, the wind carries a single whisper across the frozen fields, a question older than faith, sharper than fear. If innocence must die for belief to live, then who, truly, is the sinner? The parchment glows amber in the candlelight, its edges curled like the petals of a dying rose. Each line of ink crawls across the surface like a living thing, binding the words together into a slow, deliberate curse. The clerk bends low, his breath shallow, as though exhaling too hard might summon what these words promise. He writes in silence, the silence of obedience, of survival, each letter another knot in the rope that will soon hang from the village square. Outside the manor, the world feels half asleep. Snow dusts the thatch roofs, coating them in a thin, ghostly white. Horses stand tethered in the dark, their eyes rolling, their breath rising in clouds that catch the faintest glimmer of torchlight. Somewhere in the distance, a dog howls once, then falls quiet. Even the wind seems to hesitate before passing through this place, as if reluctant to witness what unfolds within. Inside the hall, the air is thick and slow, filled with the sour tang of smoke and sweat. The torches hiss in the damp. Shadows ripple across the walls, long, uncertain, trembling. At the center of it all stands the accused, the herbalist, the woman from the marshlands. Her hair, streaked with silver though she is not yet old, clings to her face. Her eyes, dark and steady, look not at the magistrate who judges her, but at the floor, the ancient stones worn smooth by the tread of centuries. She stands barefoot, her soles blackened with mud, the scent of time clinging to her skin like the memory of sunlight. Her hands, rough and lined, twitch at her sides, as though still mixing roots and petals even now, still reaching for healing in a place where only punishment grows. The magistrate clears his throat. His robes rustle like dry leaves. He was once a man of study, of order. Now, he is merely a man who fears what cannot be named. You were seen, he says, his voice brittle. You were seen under the moon, gathering plants not found in the gardens of the righteous. The woman does not answer. Do you deny it? He presses. Her voice comes soft, cracked from disuse. I gather what the earth provides. The sick do not care where healing grows. The magistrate's jaw tightens. And the prayers you speak as you grind your herbs, to whom are they offered? She raises her head. The candlelight catches the moisture in her eyes, and for a moment she seems almost luminous. To the same God you claim, she says. Only I do not demand that he listen. A murmur ripples through the crowd. The villagers shift and whisper, their faces flickering between pity and fear. Some of them know her well, have brought their wounded, their fevered, their newborns to her cottage in the fog. They have tasted the bitter teas she brewed and called it salvation. But now, standing together, shoulder to shoulder beneath the gaze of the magistrate, they cannot remember her kindness without shame. So they choose fear instead. Fear is easier to share. The clerk keeps writing. His quill scratches across the parchment, the sound soft but relentless, like the gnawing of rats behind the walls. Witchcraft, the magistrate declares, his voice rising as if the word itself could burn away uncertainty. Confess, and your soul may yet be saved. She looks at him, truly looks, and for a moment he feels the weight of her gaze like a hand upon his chest. Saved, she whispers, by men who fear the wind? He recoils slightly, but the court does not notice. They are lost in the rhythm of their own ritual, accusation, denial, confession, silence. Outside, the night deepens. Snow begins to fall harder, pressing against the windows like desperate hands. The flames gutter low, and each time one dies, the shadows seem to draw closer. The herbalist's thoughts drift to the marsh. She can almost smell the damp earth, the sweetness of crushed mint beneath her boots, the low hum of insects over still water. She remembers her mother's voice teaching her the names of things that heal and things that harm, and how often they are the same. Every cure, her mother had said, is a kind of mercy, and mercy is always misunderstood. The magistrate stands, pacing before the table. You speak in riddles, he says. Your tongue is clever, but your fate is not. The clerk lifts his eyes, waiting for the next words to write. The magistrate's hand trembles as he gestures toward her. Take her below, he orders. At dawn, she will face judgment. 2 guards move forward. One hesitates, the other grabs her by the arm. The chains clink as they bind her wrists. She does not resist. Her gaze passes over the villagers one last time. Faces she once knew, now turned away like shutters before a storm. As she is led through the doorway, a single candle sputters and goes out. Smoke curls upward, pale and thin, twisting in the air like a soul trying to escape the confines of a body. The magistrate watches her disappear into the darkness of the stairwell. For a long moment, he says nothing. Then he exhales, as if something inside him has broken loose. Seal the record, he murmurs. The clerk nods, pressing hot wax to the parchment. The stamp falls with a soft, final click. It is done. Down in the cold stone cell, the air smells of iron and rain. Water drips from the ceiling in slow, deliberate rhythm. The herbalist sits on the floor, her back against the wall, chains heavy around her wrists. Across from her, a rat scurries in the straw, pausing to stare before vanishing through a crack. She almost smiles. Life, however small, still finds its way through even the hardest walls. She hums softly, not a song, not a prayer, just a sound to keep the silence from devouring her. In her mind, she sees her marsh again, the low mist curling around her cottage, the way the reeds bent when the wind spoke to them. She wonders if the villagers will burn her home, or if the fog will rise to guard it. Above her, in the hall now emptied of judgment, the magistrate lingers. He stands by the hearth, staring into the ashes. His hands tremble as he removes his robe. Beneath the authority, beneath the symbols of law and faith, he is simply a man, tired, frightened, haunted. The words he spoke echo in his head, warped and distant. Confess, and your soul may yet be saved. But whose soul? He wonders. Hers or mine? He pours wine into a cup and drinks too quickly. The liquid burns his throat, staining his lips red. The candles flicker, and for an instant he imagines the room filled with faces. The faces of those who stood where she stands now, condemned by his hand. How many? He cannot remember. He only remembers the silence that follows every verdict, the hollow echo that fills the room when the door closes behind them. The clerk finishes tidying the desk. He glances once toward the magistrate and hesitates, as if he might speak, but says nothing. Instead, he leaves quietly, his footsteps fading into the corridor. The magistrate is alone. He looks to the parchment, still warm with wax, and presses his palm against it. It is the law, he whispers to no one. But the law feels brittle tonight, like ice ready to crack beneath his weight. Outside, dawn begins its slow arrival. The first faint blue creeps along the horizon. The wind picks up, rattling the shutters. A bell tolls once, not for mass, not for celebration, but for the gathering of witnesses. The villagers assemble in the square. Snow crunches underfoot. Torches burn weakly in the pale light. The scaffold waits, a dark silhouette against the silver morning. The rope swings slightly, creaking as if impatient. They bring her forward. Her hair has been combed, her hands still bound. She looks upward, her breath misting in the air. The world smells of wood smoke and frost. The magistrate stands nearby, his face expressionless. Yet beneath his calm, something trembles. The clerk stands beside him, holding the record like a holy book. A priest mutters the final rites. His voice is thin, unsure, as though afraid the words might turn back on him. The herbalist does not listen. She looks instead at the horizon, at the faint gold bleeding into the sky. She speaks softly, so only those closest can hear. You will bury my body, but the earth will not forget me. The roots will remember. The wind will carry my name. No one answers. The rope is placed around her neck. The wood beneath her feet creaks. For a heartbeat, everything is still. The crowd, the guards, even the snow seems to pause mid-fall. Then the lever is pulled. A sound follows, brief, final, the kind of sound that silences birds. The villagers bow their heads. Some cross themselves. Others simply stare. The magistrate feels his knees weaken, but he does not move. The clerk writes one final line upon the parchment, judgment carried out at dawn. He dots the last period with trembling fingers. When it is over, they cut her down. Her body is carried away, her hair catching the light like strands of pale fire. The villagers begin to disperse. The torches are extinguished, one by one, until only smoke remains. The magistrate turns away, unable to watch as the cart rolls toward the edge of the marsh. He feels the morning sun touch his face, warm, indifferent. Somewhere in the fog, a rooster crows. Once that sound meant life beginning. Now it sounds like an ending echoing through hollow stone. He returns to the manor in silence. The corridor feels longer than before. Every footstep echoes. In his chamber, he removes the parchment from the clerk's stack and holds it before the fire. The wax seal glistens one last time. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he drops it into the flames. The paper curls, blackens, and collapses inward, turning into a small storm of ash. For a moment, the scent that rises is not of parchment, but of time. He steps back, startled. The memory of her voice drifts through his mind. You have forgotten how to listen. He closes his eyes. Outside, the wind moves through the trees, low and whispering. Somewhere beyond the fields, the marsh stirs, reeds bending, water rippling, as if welcoming something unseen. By nightfall, the villagers will claim to hear strange sounds near the old cottage. The creak of doors that should not move, the faint hum of a woman's song carried on the mist. Some will say it is the devil. Others will say it is grief. But the earth will not deny her. In spring, when the frost finally surrenders, herbs will bloom where her ashes fell. Valerian, foxglove, and wild thyme. The villagers will not speak her name, yet they will use her remedies again. And when fever strikes, they will whisper prayers that smell faintly of smoke. The magistrate, old and gray, will sometimes wake at night and swear he can smell her garden on the wind. He will walk to the window and look toward the marsh, where a thin light glows through the mist. Not bright, not frightening, only constant, like a candle that refuses to die. And though he will never say it aloud, some nights he will bow his head and whisper into the darkness, "Forgive me." But the wind will only answer with silence. Still, somewhere in that silence, the world keeps breathing. The frost melts, the roots drink, the earth remembers, and the scent of time lingers long after the flames have died. Night descends not gently, but as if poured, thick, unbroken, and absolute. The forest beneath it holds its breath. Every branch, every frostbitten pine stands rigid in reverence or fear. Even the river nearby moves slower, muffled by sheets of ice that crack faintly in the stillness, the only sound brave enough to exist. Then a glow, a small orange tremor cutting through the dark. One torch, then another, then 6 in total, swaying in rhythm like fireflies led astray. The light wavers between the trunks, tracing the shapes of men and horses moving in silence. Their breath fogs in the cold, rising like pale spirits that vanish as quickly as they're born. In their midst rides a 7th shape, smaller, bound, blindfolded. Her name is Ira. The ropes bite into her wrists, the horse beneath her uneasy. Each step jolts through her bones, the cold settling into her marrow. But her back stays straight, her head tilted just enough that the blindfold brushes her cheek with every gust of wind, reminding her that darkness isn't just around her. It has been given to her. The men ride without speaking. The sound of hooves fills the spaces where courage should be. The captain leads, his armor dim beneath the torchlight, his jaw set hard against doubt. Behind him, a priest mutters the beginnings of a prayer, though the words come out fractured, frozen on his lips. Someone coughs. Another spits. The night swallows it all. The path winds deeper into the woods, a narrow vein through the heart of winter. Snow clings to the branches, heavy, ready to fall. A single drop melts and slides from pine to earth, landing on Ira's wrist like a tear. She doesn't flinch. The horses snort and fidget. They can smell the fire ahead before the men can see it. A pyre, half-built, waits in the clearing, rough timbers stacked with brutal care. The wind circles it as though curious. The captain signals a halt. The forest answers with silence. He dismounts first, boots sinking into snow that crunches beneath his weight. He moves to her side, hesitates, then removes her blindfold. The night unfolds before her eyes like an open wound, black sky torn by silver light. The stars above seem impossibly near, their shimmer both cruel and kind. For a long moment, Ira only stares. Her gaze drifts past the men, past the pyre, past even the thought of what comes next. There is peace in her eyes, and that peace unnerves them more than any curse ever could. The youngest guard, barely older than a boy, lowers his torch. He tries not to look at her face, but curiosity wins. She is not what he expected. No twisted crone, no wild-eyed sorceress. Only a woman with gentle features, her hair pale as straw, matted from travel, her skin cold and bloodless under moonlight. He feels a sudden, shameful thought. She could have been my sister. The captain clears his throat. Bring her forward, he orders, though the words sound hollow. The men obey. Ira is led toward the pyre, her steps measured, slow, deliberate. Her bare feet press into the snow, leaving crescents that glimmer in torchlight, small, perfect, and fleeting. The priest raises his book, pages fluttering like frightened birds. By the order of his grace, Bishop Aldrin of the Holy See, his voice trembles. He swallows and tries again. You stand accused of witchcraft, of heresy, of consorting with enough. The captain's voice cuts clean through the air. He cannot bear to hear it, not the words, nor their emptiness. He gestures toward the pyre. Bind her. The men hesitate. The one holding the rope looks to Ira as if asking permission. She nods once. The rope coils around her like a slow-moving serpent. Her hands are tied before her, but her posture remains upright, proud. The wood creaks beneath her weight. A faint wind picks up, carrying the scent of pitch and pine. In the flicker of torchlight, her shadow stretches tall across the snow, taller than the men around her. The forest seems to lean closer. A whisper breaks from her lips, too soft to understand. The young guard steps closer. What did she say? She prays, says the priest, though even he sounds uncertain. But Ira's lips are not forming the words of any church. They move in a rhythm older than scripture, older than sin. A song her mother once sang when fevers came, when lambs were born, when storms passed. Her breath turns it to fog, and in that fog, the boy imagines he sees shapes, faces perhaps, moving within. The captain takes the torch. It trembles in his grasp, as if the fire itself resists what's about to come. He walks toward her slowly, each step heavy, each breath louder than it should be. Ira watches him. Her eyes glisten with reflection, not of fear, but of knowing. When he stops before her, she tilts her head slightly, as if studying him. "Do you believe this will save you?" he asks quietly. "I do not seek saving," she replies. Her voice is steady, calm, the kind that belongs beside cradles and graves alike. I only wish you peace when you dream of this night. The captain flinches. He doesn't know why. He thinks of his daughter, the way she laughs, the fever she once had, the herbs that saved her. He realizes, too late, where those herbs came from. He drops the torch. The flames crawl fast. Dry straw sighs, then roars. The air cracks and ripples, smoke unfurling upward in dark ribbons. The heat blooms, sudden and vicious, painting their faces in trembling gold. Ira closes her eyes. Her lips move again, not in prayer but in farewell. The fire climbs her dress, devours the hem, rises along her legs like sunlight reversed. The scent of burning cloth mixes with pine and pitch. The men step back instinctively, their shadows jerking across the snow. No one speaks. Only the forest breathes, slow, ancient, patient. A scream might have come, but it doesn't. Ira makes no sound. Her chin lifts toward the stars, her mouth parted in something that might be a smile, or perhaps a sigh. Her hair catches fire, and for one moment, it looks as though she wears a crown of light. The captain's throat tightens. The priest falls to his knees, muttering, "Lord, have mercy," again and again, as if the words could smother the flames. The young guard turns away, tears freezing on his cheeks. He stumbles into the snow, vomiting bile and guilt. Still, she burns, and the fire burns clean. No twisting, no curse, no storm. Only light. The crack of splitting wood startles the men. The pyre shifts, collapses inward. Ash swirls upward, black against white, curling through the air like tiny birds fleeing a cage. The forest glows. Torches dim beside the inferno's rage. The sky, clear now, watches unblinking. The captain kneels, his hand clutching the pendant beneath his armor. A small cross that suddenly feels too heavy, too sharp. He wonders if heaven is watching, or if heaven turned away long ago. When the flames finally die, only the sound of wind remains, the soft hiss of snow falling onto embers. The clearing steams with ghostly heat. Ash drifts and lands gently on the men's cloaks, their lashes, their lips. No one dares move. The priest is the first to break. He gathers his book, closes it with trembling hands, and walks toward the trees. One by one, the others follow, their torches dimming as they vanish into the forest's throat. The captain stays. He cannot leave. He looks to the stake, blackened, broken, surrounded by a halo of white snow. Something glints among the ashes. He reaches down, fingers brushing through the soot until they touch metal. A small crescent moon pendant, warped and burned but unmistakable. He holds in his palm. It is still warm. For a moment, he imagines the forest breathing again. Not wind, but breath. He imagines the trees bending, the smoke rising not in sorrow, but in witness. He pockets the pendant. Then he kneels in the snow, not to pray, not as he was taught, but simply to listen. And in that silence, he hears it, a faint hum, like the echo of a lullaby carried by wind. It drifts between the trunks, gentle, wordless, older than faith. He knows the tune. His daughter hums it when she cannot sleep. He closes his eyes. Hours pass. The night softens. The pyre cools to ash, glowing faintly under starlight. Ira's remains mingle with the snow, carried by the wind toward the deeper woods. By dawn, the clearing is clean. Only the faint scent of smoke lingers and the quiet memory of warmth. A raven lands atop the charred post, tilts its head, and caws once, sharp and final. Then it takes flight, vanishing into the pale morning. The forest, as if exhaling, settles. And in its heart, beneath roots and frost, something stirs, the whisper of life reborn. Tiny shoots of green push through the soil where ash has fallen. By spring, wildflowers will grow there, white petals tinged faintly with silver, bending toward the moon each night. The villagers will not speak her name aloud, but they will remember. They will leave offerings of herbs at the edge of the woods. When their children fall ill, they will still grind willow bark and murmur softly under the breath, "Ira, guide my hands." The church will call it superstition. The bishop will send more men. But the forest will remember who the first fire truly consumed. And when the wind returns, it will carry her voice, faint, familiar, eternal, woven into the rustle of pine, the crackle of frost, the whisper of the moon.